Want to know what your dog is thinking?
Have a challenging dog behavior you need help with?
The Dish on Dogs is your source for all your canine questions.
Improve your relationship with your dog and deepen your understanding of your furry friend. Right here on the Dish on Dogs. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Dish on Dogs. I'm your host, Mike Gould, mayor of Houndstown, USA, home to the happiest dogs on earth. What is like McDonald's. We have 2.5 million guests and growing, which is pretty phenomenal. We've talked it over here. I'm joined, of course, by the very lovely Jackie Bondanza. She is the brains of this. You see this brain? This is the human brain. This is the animal brain. She is the human brain. My brain is really tiny back here.
Yes, it is.
Right.
It is
but
tiny.
The good news is our brains complement one another in this particular business we're in. And we're going to talk about that, how that can be, how... why we're so effective in doing what we do. How are we so effective at taking care of Today we have, Jackie, do you know today in our system there's over 1,000 dogs, almost 1,500 dogs, meaning today we're caring for dogs of all shapes, sizes, two-legged dogs, blind dogs, all kinds of dogs.
Right.
Bully breeds, we talked about that in an episode, German Shepherds, Rottweilers, Dobermans. So I guess today's edition of the Dish on Dogs is going to be, we never really talked about how we ended up here, how you ended up here, how I ended up here.
So let's talk about the history of Houndstown. Why did Houndstown start? How did it start? It's been a long journey, right? It's been over 20 years since you opened the first location. So I thought we could talk about the evolution of that. So kind of start us out by explaining quickly your professional history, and then how did you come into kind of thinking about this concept?
Right. So before talking about anybody's professional history, because that usually assumes we're adults and how we all got to where you are, how did you get to where you are, we have to talk, in my mind, from a very basic element. So meaning, I've started to share more things over when we do seminars, more about me personally, my personal story. And it's important because number one, people relate to it. Sometimes they relate to it. And other times it explains why I seem to know what I know about dogs. And It's not from studying. I've never read a book on dogs, although I want to write one, but I can't write. So it's a whole complicated thing. And I've never read a book on franchising. So my point of the matter is my life or my knowledge is based on observation. So if you look at this picture here of me as a very young lad, I have a little puppy in my hand. And then you see me go full circle over here. I have the toupee on over here. And no, that's really my natural hair. But anyway, but these are important developmental times in my life. So here's the interesting thing. And I hope people can relate to this. I happen to be a very shy, introverted person. It doesn't seem like that because how I deal with that is having this big, loud mouth. But fundamentally, I'm shy. So if you're shy out there, shy people, introverted people do one thing. They observe. They stay in the background and they watch things. They don't participate in things. So if you're kind of more extroverted, you're always interacting. I'm not. From a very young boy, I just watched because I was shy. So I didn't feel confident to interact. So that's how I started to watch animals interact with humans, how humans interact with their environment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Fast forward to the early 80s, the New York City Police Department was developing a canine unit. They never had one before, so I was one of the founding members. I wanted that job so badly. Most people would say, you must love dogs. And the answer was no. It was really my disdain for human beings. And I know that sounds horrible. It does sound horrible, but that's the truth. You want the truth. People say you must love dogs, or at that time. I always had a great appreciation for animals. I think that I learned, as I say in many episodes, I find them fascinating. Birds are probably one of the most fascinating creatures I've ever seen, and their abilities. So But my real inspiration of joining and fighting for a position on the New York City Police Department was I didn't want to drive around with a human partner 8, 10, 12 hours a day and arguing over whether we want Chinese food or Mexican food. And I'm trapped in a car. I didn't like their driving styles. So it was really stressful for me to be with a human. Unfortunately, the NYPD at the time, you had to be with a human. You had a human partner. So when I saw this canine unit, I did whatever. I think I was married at the time and they were looking for single people. I think I got divorced immediately. No, because at the time they did. They really did. Honestly, it's funny because at the time, we're going back how many years? 40 years? That was a criteria because they felt that if you had a dog and you were married, you couldn't fulfill the needs of the unit. You had to be deployable any minute of the day. So I remember there was about 5 things, and being married, they wanted a single person. I'm like, no problem. I will get divorced tomorrow, which I think I did. So I really wanted that position more than anything, but it was really, and then again, maintaining that same thing. I'm watching dogs. I'm not just doing what people tell me to do, unfortunately. I'm challenging conventional wisdom. That's all I've ever done. Challenge conventional wisdom. So we talk about trust science. Yeah, you should trust it, but it's also science is meant to be challenged. If we listen to science in 1400s, we thought the earth was flat, but scientists later developed. Anyway, so there I am in the NYPD Canine Unit, this shy, rather relatively handsome young man.
And you had hair then.
I had hair, synthetic or otherwise. I always had hair. But anyway, so I had this dog. And this bond that you created with a dog, think about it. I'm with the dog 24 hours a day, more than obviously family members. You go to work with the dog, you care for this dog, and this is why this tremendous bond is developed between man and human. Mm-hmm. We did everything. We were under stressful, all kinds of things. Boring, stressful, go out partying. I remember going to Grand Central Station at midnight to party. My dog would be running around Grand Central Station 2 o'clock in the morning while I was getting inebriated. But that's a story for another day.
Good to know. It's our police department here.
Right. So if you picture Grand Central Station, and a dog running around loose, a police dog running around loose at 2 o'clock in the morning, and its handler was upstairs drinking excessively, you'd realize. That was then. This is now.
Right. Okay.
So that's it. That was the inspiration. And then 9/11 occurred.
So there's a couple things in between.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
So you left the NYPD and went on to become the commanding officer of the Nassau County Canine Unit out here.
Yes.
So then you were going to retire from there, right? And
yes.
you're retiring in the police department. You can retire at 20 years. So you were young.
Relatively.
And you needed a second career.
Yes.
You couldn't just retire and not do anything.
Right.
So talk about the evolution of that.
Right. So that's very interesting. So my trajectory, obviously, you're right. So when you're in law enforcement or the military, which I was for 20, 30 years, you think your next part of your life is going to kind of model after that. Meaning, in police work, you'd be in. I had a bomb sniffing company. I had my own. I developed a company was scent detection dogs. And we trained dogs to detect odors, whether it was cadavers, bombs, drugs, anything. So my partner and I developed this business prior to 9/11. Mm-hmm. We developed this because I think it was in relation to the Columbine shooting. Kids were bringing guns to school, so we wanted explosive detector dogs. So we were one of the first private companies, one of the first, not the first, one of the private companies to train dogs privately outside of law enforcement to detect these odors. Whether whatever the odor was, we could train a dog to do it. So that seemed like to be the right trajectory for me. That just expand on that. And this was a time before you ever saw bomb dogs at the airports or all the detector dogs. So
you were called down to 9/11 happened. This is before Houndstown was in the picture. 9/11 happens,
Yeah.
right? Or did you find,
Well, it
did
was
you
actually-
open the store before 9/11?
Right. So simultaneously, so I always knew I had to do something with dogs, one way or the other. That was my skill set. It was academically, I'm a buffoon. I don't know anything. I have a very difficult time processing information. So, yeah, dogs were my what was going to be my future. I just didn't know what. Now, if you would have said to me when I was a lieutenant in the police department that you're going to be operating a doggy daycare, I'd say you were crazy. It just didn't fit into that. If you said to me I was going to deploy dogs to foreign countries to do things, yeah, that would have been more my...
So then how did this come about?
So at the time of 9/11, as you correctly said, I was ready to retire. I was in the police department. I had my private bomb dog business, and I also had a factory in Port Jefferson, New York. I rented a 1,200 square foot factory for the purposes of having dogs in there for training purposes.
Okay, so it was related to the scent detection dog?
More or
Oh,
less.
I
It was
see.
really kind of a question mark.
Okay.
Then 9/11 happened. So what happened at 9/11? So before that, people, because of my relationship in the police department with dogs, neighbors would say, "Hey, Mike, we trust you. Will you watch our dog when we go away?" And I'm like, "No." My relatives, "Hey, Mike, will you watch our dog?" Because, we believe, they trusted my abilities.
Okay.
And of course, that's not what I would do. But then it dawned on me that there's a lot of people out there that want a trustworthy place to leave their dogs without a lot of BS, somebody they can trust and watch their dogs. And that was the beginning of Hounds Town. So 9/11 occurred, and then there was these thousands of rescue workers that needed a place for their dogs, right? When we went to work, and I was one of them that went to work at 9/11. So you have cops, firemen, rescue workers, thousands of dogs in the tri-state area that needed to be cared for because people were going to work. They didn't even know when they were going home.
Right.
So that was really
So you started offering boarding essentially for rescue workers' dogs in this 1,200 square foot factory store, right? And then, but it evolved into offering daycare as well.
Right. Well, right. So again, my experimental mind, because I was having police dogs there, ATF, FBI, all of these dogs that were presumably trained to be isolated and only work with the handler. So yeah, that's where my kind of experimentation came by having these dogs. And we talked in another episode, the bully breed dogs. So some dogs were German Shepherds, some were retrievers and so forth. And we just started to have them play together. And then it just caught on, and there was a demand for it. And then we just kept developing that business model, making it more publicly accessible, I guess is the word. So we take poodles. So we transition from these big detection dogs and rescue workers' dogs, to poodles. And that's when I realized that the poodle and the German Shepherd had the identical brain, just in a smaller body. And we started grouping them by size, age, and temperament. And then here we are today. Does that make sense?
Right. And then so 9/11 happened maybe about 6 or 8 months after you kind of started this, offering this, right? And then you were deployed to Italy for a year.
I forgot about that. Yes.
And you had to have family members step in.
Thank you, Jackie.
To run the business.
Yes, right. So right after, so things are going good. I signed my 10-year lease, as every franchisee knows. I'm all excited. Started my business, my plan, my life plan. I'm retiring from the police department. My last call to duty, so to speak, was at 9/11 doing rescue work on the pile at Ground Zero. My job was to, look for explosives surrounding Ground Zero, because at the time, for those of you who can remember, nobody knew what was going on. They didn't know if this was World War III breaking out. Nobody knew anything. So, so I'm like, okay, as soon as this is over and things settle down at Ground Zero, I'm going to pursue my other business of managing dogs, pet management for other people privately. And then on November 17th, I get a letter in the mail that I had to pack 50 pounds, Jackie, of clothing. You're familiar with 50 pounds.
It's actually a lot.
That's a lot. But for the rest of my life?
Was it the rest of your life?
Well, you didn't know. Bottom line, they said, get 50 pounds of belongings. You're getting on a flight from Kennedy, and you're going to Naples, Italy. I thought I was going to Naples, Florida. I was packing suntan lotion. I was all excited. I had my flip-flops. But I was going to Naples, Italy, because, as I said, at that moment in time, historically, nobody knew what was going on. And southern Italy, at the time, was a jump-off point for terrorists. They could go there. They can blend in very easily. So I was sent there because of working with the military working dog. So my skills, civilian skills of training bomb dogs, etc. So I was called to Naples, Italy, and my job there was to conduct search warrants in safe houses and so forth using bomb dogs for explosive. So that was my job. I ended up being there for almost 2 years with my 50 pounds of clothes.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure you bought other stuff while you were there.
Camouflage underwear, yeah. Go ahead.
So
I didn't have enough of that. What? Jackie, you have to have camouflage underwear.
Yes,
All
to
right,
fit in
ahead.
when you're eating all that pizza.
Right. Oh, the margarita pizza.
How did you manage then? Just talk about how you managed running a new business from 3,000 miles, 5,000 miles away.
Right. So this is interesting, and I think this is an important point to even today, because this is part of our culture. So our life plans changed, right? I had no expectation of being in Italy for 2 years. I just invested pretty much all my savings into running this business. Fortunately for me, you have to do what you have to do. So I have family members, children, that took over for me, relatives and stuff, and they just jumped in. The landlord actually was very nice. He knew that this was out of my control, so he gave me some 3 months rent, etc. But my family members ran my doggy daycare, and that's the end of it. And when I think of today, with all the things going on with COVID and so forth, do you know, Jackie, that I have not closed the doors to a Hounds Town in 22 years, our corporate locations, including this one? I've never closed the door. And I'm very proud of that fact. And so my point was, if I could do it from Naples, Italy,
Right.
with no communication, remember, there was nothing. So there was cell phone service, but that's it. There was no real emails or anything.
Right.
So anyway, my point is that's how we did it. So my family jumped in. It became a family business at that point, kind of. Even though my family didn't really enjoy doing it, they stepped up and did it for me. And the landlord and the community came together. Since then, we've never closed. We've had Hurricane Sandy. We've had all kinds of tumultuous events happen in our life, including COVID. We didn't close during COVID. So am I answering any of the questions that we're supposed to be talking about?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're just kind of talking about the history and how this plays into the culture we have today, right? So you come back from Naples. It's almost 2 years later. You outgrew that space, the
Very
1,200 square
quickly.
feet, and moved to another 7,000 square foot location.
Right.
And then from there, a couple of years later, opened a second store and then a third store. And just, over the course of 10 or 15 years, developed multiple locations on the island. But I think you never really had the intention of franchising this out of the gate.
No. So again, life happens, and so the question in franchising: can you develop a model that's transferable? That's the simple question. When you talk about franchising, can somebody take what they do, whether it's cooking a Big Mac, and show somebody else how to cook a Big Mac? And can it be consistent, safe, and secure for everyone? And can it be profitable? So that always intrigued me, because I've been teaching humans how to interact with dogs for 40 years. And this was just another element to that, which I enjoy. I enjoy, for the sake of the dogs, trying to teach people the real needs of the dogs, not what they think the needs are. And that's been our business model forever. Nothing's changed. Very funny to me. Somebody asked me recently at a Discovery Day, one of the potential franchisees, and they say, Mike, you've been doing this for 40 years. What have you changed in 40 years regarding the dogs? And I says, well, in my sarcastic, condescending way, I said, I haven't changed anything. Nothing. And why is that? Dogs haven't changed. Dogs are the same. The domestic dogs are the same for the past 50,000 years. So I haven't changed anything except my teaching style. I think I'm more tolerant now of humans.
Really?
Than I used to be. Okay. But my teaching style, I'm just trying to learn ways to teach people how simple dogs are and what their basic fundamental needs are. And that's never changed forever. And it's not going to change. And still this is what I said, when dogs start standing erect and growing thumbs, I'm going to be in a little, I'm going to have to change the way I interact with dogs. But I don't see any evidence that that's happening anytime in the near future. So the question is now what you guys do, meaning you brainiacs, there's a need for brainiacs, marketing, all the things that you guys do behind the scenes is important. But not my role is this hasn't changed one bit. It actually gets a little better all the time because I'm always fascinated. I'll find a new something, a behavior of a dog and what caused it. Does that make sense, Jackie?
Yeah, I think so. The heart of our business is pretty standard and hasn't evolved that much. And I think, a big part of our culture is that we are a casual, we're family friendly. Even though we're a franchise, we have a small business, family owned and operated feel to all of our stores. And I think that comes from how this all started, which is it was a family business way back 20 years ago. Right. And that kind of culture and that priority has carried through the past 2 decades.
Right. But one of the most interesting things to me, because since then, obviously, there's doggy daycares all over the place. So doggy daycare is a generic term. So if I say to somebody else, what does a day at doggy daycare look like? And they'll say, well, we read books at 12 or we put them in timeout and we do all this crazy stuff. We at Houndstown, if you really think about it, nothing's changed in our business model. We put dogs in groups of other dogs. So it's an outlet for them. And I always laugh. We still do work at shelters, and the shelter will call and they'll say, Mike, we want to start an enrichment program for dogs. And I ask this very simple question. What is enrichment for a dog that just wants to do nothing but hump, jump, and dump all day in their natural state? What is enrichment? Reading a book, teaching them tricks, showing them a movie on television about the birds and the bees. What is enrichment to a dog? Seriously, what is enrichment to a polar bear? What is enrichment to a bird? What's enrichment to a fish? The enrichment for fish is water. So this is, ironically, Jackie, you're getting tired, right? All right, let me have another drink of scotch. Ironically, we stayed this course. And we didn't gravitate. We don't read books. We don't give special.
So we stayed the core.
Yes.
Yes. That is.
But that's our secret to success.
Yes. Agreed.
We didn't try all this crazy enrichment because dogs don't need enrichment. They just need to be in packs.
Right. So we were founded on the premise that dogs just need a place to go where the owner feels that it's safe and secure and trustworthy. Yes. And for the dog, the goal is to just have fun, relax, and be themselves. We've, over the past almost 22 years, just stuck to that premise, and haven't deviated from that. Although we've developed our marketing and the way that we interact with customers, customer service, different procedures and processes, but our core values are kind of rooted in the way that Houndstown was founded organically over 20 years ago.
Right, simplicity. And it's funny to me that it's the simplicity that makes us successful. And as human nature is, our competitors are trying to make a better mousetrap. But as I said earlier, the dogs are the same for past 50,000 years. So you can't really do anything differently except allow them a safe place without human or very little human intervention. So kids, as I say all the time, I could take a 3 or 4-year-old child and put him anywhere on earth and give him a puddle of water and a ball. It doesn't even have to be a ball. It could be a coconut, any cylindrical object. And they will have a blast as long as people aren't yelling at them and trying to make them play a game that we want to play. And that's where humans screw this all up. We project on our children and our dogs what we want them to be.
Right. So we don't do that here.
We don't.
So what is your vision for Houndstown in the next 5 and 10 years? You founded this 20 years ago. Where do you see this going? What are your hopes for the brand?
Very truthfully, and I wouldn't have said this 3 years ago because the development of Houndstown has taken on such a rapid growth. I don't look at big things. I try to keep things very simple. Again, that's how my brain operates, is simplicity. But now, seeing what's going on with dogs, particularly during COVID and post-COVID, it never ends. The need for a place like Houndstown, for all these pets at home that need a place to go. So it's endless. So again, until dogs start, as I say, developing their brain where they can go into the workforce, right now it's endless. And I really mean that. As I said, I recently took a 2,500-mile trip driving across to Chicago and back. And every city I pull into, whether it's Toledo, Ohio, whether it's Cleveland, these communities are packed with humans. And humans are gravitating for dogs for many social and psychological reasons right now. It's now more than ever people are gravitating towards dogs specifically, not horses, not pigs, dogs for social and psychological benefits. And they just, frankly, they have this. So what I like to say is, back in the day, I used to call Houndstown or doggy daycare a luxury for people that wanted to go play golf or they wanted to go shopping. So doggy daycare was a luxury. 20 years later, this is a necessity. It's an absolute necessity for pet owners. So that's my vision. A couple of million stores. I don't know, Hawaii.
Oh, that's a lot. Millions.
I don't know. I'm just using numbers, but it's endless. My point is, it's endless. As long the dogs, again, the beauty of it is we leverage the fact that dogs are identical to the way they were. So a 3-year-old dog today is the same as a 3-year-old dog 50,000 years ago. Domestic dogs I'm talking about, not obviously wild dogs.
Right, of course. But so if you think about when you started this 20 years ago,
Yes.
What are some of the values that have been important that have maintained over the past 20 years and that will continue to maintain as we grow?
Simplicity, honesty, and transparency. There's no reason. We're not trying to exploit people's emotion. This is really, again, what annoys me, because dogs don't talk. We've taken them into our lives from an emotional point of view. And you go to pet care, and it can be vets, some vets, not all pet care providers, but they exploit them. So if you're asked, do you want to buy an ice cream cone for your dog, and you say no, now they look at you like you're an evil person. So the exploitation of humans and dogs, so we keep it honest and transparent and simple. And that's never changed. All the other technology, these cameras and this thing that I get yelled at for not talking to, this is all new technology. Dogs, same.
Okay.
Capiche?
All right. So let's wrap it up.
Does that wrap it up?
I think
Here we are.
It's Houndstown in a nutshell, guys.
Dog,
So
nutshell.
to learn more about Houndstown, visit us at houndstownusa.com. Thanks for watching another exciting episode of the Dish on Dogs podcast. You can also watch us on YouTube on the Dish on Dogs podcast. If you're a listener, you can catch us on iTunes, Spotify, and all your other podcast platforms. For more information, click the link in the description. We'll see everybody next time.